Welcome back to Scene in 15. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Have you seen Mad God? It's a stop-motion animation horror where a few mysterious people called assassins descend ever deeper into a dystopian nightmare-fueled world full of grotesque creatures. The film begins with a spiral tower surrounded by people who seem to be cheering as a storm engulfs it. After a Leviticus quote from the Torah, we see through the perspective of a frantic eyeball. A prison tower with spotlights and cannons. The weapons lock on to a descending diving bell and fires. Inside the diving bell is an assassin, who is shaken around by the explosions, barely missing him. After surviving the onslaught, he descends under the surface, past a huge ammonite fossil, an arid forest, dinosaur bones, sculptures, and some kind of alien skull. He finally lands with a thud and makes his way on foot, carrying a briefcase down a path lined with debris and rust. Some miniature garden gnomes are having a dispute, and he steps on them. He brings out a map of the world to check it, and a part of it falls off. As he makes his way further, the landscape becomes more unpleasant, with polluted water and a mountain in the shape of a skull. The assassin takes out a pair of binoculars and looks at a tower on top of the mountain. Through the windows, we see something that seems sexual. A maestro frantically hammering on their piano, and a man continuously stabbing a woman who seems to laugh and enjoy it. A bell rings and a disabled figure calls out of the pipe to catch a creature who is attracted to the light. The noise disturbs the Shiite from her tower. With her pearly whites and dangling memories, she comes down from the mountain. She peeks into the pipe, pulls the disabled guy out, and chops him up with her butcher's knife. Meanwhile, the assassin sneaks away and checks his map. More pieces of it crumble off. He pulls on a rope which quickly lowers him down onto a rusty pipe. He walks along a pipe and opens a rusty door. In a room he sees a monkey tied down to a table, some furry creatures jumping in a cage, and a glittery doll masturbating. He closes the door while the monkey screams in agony. After walking past some grotesque skulls, he exits out of the pipe to bright light, which we then see is coming from some giants being electrocuted in chairs, while pooping themselves constantly. He walks past them and pulls out his map again, and guess what? More pieces fall off. He takes a lift down past the creature who is catching all that giant poop into his gaping mouth. Nice. Further down there are pulsating organs and eyeballs. Sexy. After descending past this organic level, the environment becomes more industrial. Pumps are pushing back and forth, while big heavy slabs of metal templates churn out some fragile strawmen like humanoids, who slowly lurch along, seemingly unaware of the assassin. We see other mechanical creatures, and a crane lifts some larvae. There are some huge smokestacks in the background. A train chugs along. All the while, endless lines of these strawmen stumble forward. They reach a pit where they get burnt and fall into it. They work like slaves, dragging, lifting metal slabs and guiding the larvae into meat grinders. Many are crushed by heavy objects. Thousands of corpses pile up. We then see the brain bug from Starship Troopers being cut apart and injected by a triple syringe, while some strawmen get run over by a train. The metal slabs from earlier are being hurtled around by a magnet and smashed through some strawmen. What a great life they have. A dinosaur creature with tit sack for balls shits everywhere, while a flamingo-like strawman sticks his head in the dinosaur's ass and tries to wipe it, but gets shit on. Suddenly, a baby's voice is broadcast on loudspeakers, which seems to call the strawman. We see the baby looking on monitors, looking like he smokes 2 packs a day, with decaying teeth and seared skin. The assassin pulls out the remainder of his map, which crumbles apart, and he drops the rest. He reaches a hatch, but before he enters through it, a straw man approaches him. But before they can make friends, the tit-sack dinosaur uses the straw man as a trampoline. Inside the hatch, it is pitch black, so the assassin lights a flare and heads down some slimy stairs. He reaches the bottom, and we notice there is something with many legs following him. He walks through a very dark area surrounded by what looks like thick tree trunks. The same crawling thing runs past behind him. He reaches an opening where he sees mountains of briefcases like his. He opens his one up to reveal a bomb. He winds back the timer and sets it. Leggy McCraw creeps up, captures him, and drags him away. The timer on the bomb ticks down, but then fails to detonate. Later on, an audience gathers around to watch the assassin get stripped of his clothes. They laugh and applaud the performance. Next, we see many different bodies tied down to operating tables in rooms. The assassin is wrapped in bandages, with syringes and other contraptions attached to him. One of his eyes is permanently open and bloodshot. A mad doctor and a nurse enter the room and they cut his torso open. They tear out his organs, spraying fluids everywhere. After that, they start to pull coins, jewelry, and other metallic objects out from inside him, until they pull out a disgustingly hairy baby. The nurse carries the baby out of the operating room. The doctor drills a hole into the assassin's head and inserts a camera into it. Next, we see a man in a bunker using binoculars to watch some numerous assassins and Nazi officer. The assassins are taking down walls, digging holes, and trying to break open a gate with a battering ram. Suddenly, they all let out a cry. Inside the bunker, we see the man has just come back from a visit with Freddy Krueger and Edward Scissorhands, manicurist. He fancies himself up a bit more with a necklace, a red robe, and some slippers before checking on some witches under his desk. They hand him a map sewn together on skin. He heads outside where hundreds of assassins have gathered. He heads up to another diving bell and hands the map to the assassin inside, who is then lowered down into some liquid. The second assassin lands in the ruins of a city. He finds a bike, but the front wheels fall off. He then witnesses a glowing red creature use its stinger and destroy some zombie-like creatures. The assassin finds a rickety motorbike and rides down the streets. He sees Chewbacca jumping around, and then a minotaur being jacked off by bird-headed women. He arrives at an opening and his bike breaks down. Luckily, he finds a jeep and hotwires it, and continues his journey. He drives past thousands of bodies in mounds and on spikes. He checks his upgraded skin map, which doesn't fall apart, but then runs into some tanks shooting their shells. Explosions go off right next to him, and some bullets hit his truck, but he miraculously gets away. He eventually reaches another opening where there are nukes going off on the horizon. He arrives at a building where there is a square spiral ramp heading down. He carefully drives his truck all the way down the ramp. Back outside the operating room, the nurse hurriedly walks down a corridor until she gets to a huge bunker door. The door opens, and a plague doctor with many bone decorations hanging off his hat. The nurse hands him the hairy baby, and the door slams shut. The nurse crawls into some hay with a pillow and a lamp by the side and goes to sleep. Stone slabs retract to clear a path for the plague doctor as he carries the baby. He passes a room full of sculptures, a gate guarded by two bulls. He makes his way down some stairs, and a neglected yellow skeleton baby cries to Mama. In the next room, there are massive colorful vats holding squid-like creatures. The hunchback of Notre Dame throws out the trash and returns to see some warty monsters having a fight with their shovels. So he has a word with them and flips a switch to electrocute some metal masks that they are wearing. They both puke up some green goo, then get back to work shoveling shit. Back in his lab, the hunchback feeds his colorful pets some maggots. They happily slurp them down until the hunchback releases a four-legged crab spider who captures the orange pet. The hunchback is amused. In his good mood, he does some spring cleaning. Afterwards, he enjoys his other hobby, watching nukes go off using his telescope. Then he organizes some scrolls and books, and the plague doctor returns. The baby is placed on a table, and the hunchback hands the plague doctor a book. The doctor then turns a dial and crushes the baby, releasing its juices into a vat, which they then heat up and forge a bar of something silvery. The hunchback grinds up that bar and pours out some glittery stardust. The plague doctor takes the stardust and signals for the hunchback to open a hatch to some portal and throws the stardust through it. There is a reaction, and a huge explosion creates a universe. Planets are shown in a row, and a stardust block contaminates one of those planets. Life evolves, and civilizations rise. Some little girls spray paint the symbol of anarchy on a wall, and are shot at by automatic weapons. Civilization collapses, leaving behind ruins. We then see a black hole shooting out many of those stardust slabs. We see flashing imagery of clocks, candles, and some of the worlds and creatures we have visited and seen. The clocks and the bomb timer strike 12, and a cuckoo bird comes out. Now you've seen it, and remember kids, when your friends hand you magic mushrooms, you might have a bad trip.